All righty, welcome back from the episode of 2 Point Sports. Today is Monday, January 9th, and Oklahoma has picked up another transfer as of Sunday evening. They are in the process of hopefully picking up another one or two transfers that we're going to be talking about here on this show. We're going to be talking the addition of Rondell Bothroyd, potentially Devon Sears, and then the impacts of Matthew Lee choosing to go to Miami, and then Marvin Mims going to the NFL. And what does that leave the receiving room to look like? And who do they get from the transfer portal potentially? And could it be one guy? Could it be two guys? We're going to go into that. So before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. Over 5,500 subscribers, knocking the door to 5,600. If you're new here or if you've been here often, hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, like the video, and then comment on the video. We've got Brandon, so Brandon will be doing the actual individual challenge, his thing, so be sure to stick around for that. And then follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. Leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. That helps us out a lot, and we're just a couple followers away from 3,000 on Twitter. So if you don't already, go follow us on Twitter, and it's linked below. So, all
Shout
right.
out the TikTok page too. We
Oh,
recently started
yeah.
a TikTok channel.
We
Follow
did.
us on there. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. TikTok, 2_plane_sports. Go follow us on there. It is active. Jose will also include that in the link below, and it will be there, and we'll try to maybe have a TikTok or two of Brandon dancing and go viral. I'm sure that will help our channel out. So anyway, so let's just get into talking about Rondell Bothroyd. He is a guy that Jose and we talked about him a little bit. Brandon wasn't on, but OU, as of Sunday evening on his birthday, he announced that he's committed to Oklahoma for his last year of eligibility. He's transferring in from Wake Forest. He's been there for 5 years. He's coming in with one more year of eligibility because he redshirted in 2018. 2020 doesn't count, and so he's got 1 year of eligibility left. Last year had 30 total tackles, 15 were solo, 6 sacks, a couple forced fumbles. And in his career, he has 136 total tackles, 16 and a half sacks, and four forced fumbles. He's currently right now, before Schmitty, 6'4", 265, according to ESPN. I feel like he comes in and he might beef up a little bit, or that, they might tweak him a little bit, but I feel like he comes in and contributes immediately. I'll give the floor to Brandon since he has not talked about him before. And what do you think?
I mean, it's an exciting get. You just read off his numbers. A guy who's 6'4", 270, 6 sacks last year. He had 8 sacks in 2021 and 60 total tackles. So if anything, he had a little bit of a down year in 22, but as Jose talked about pre-show, may not have played all the games. I think the most impressive thing to me, and I told you guys before the show started, is you got to tip your cap to Brent Venables and staff for what they've been able to do in the portal in the offseason in general. You've brought in now 5 dudes who I think are going to be day one contributors, maybe starters even. When you look at Jacob Lacey, Jason McCullough, Reggie Pearson, Rondell Bothroyd, and Trace Ford. So, I mean, that automatically, I obviously, I don't know like what other schools have been doing, but I feel like 5 guys who are going to contribute right away on the defensive side of the ball from the transfer portal is very impressive. And I think for next season, for the defensive end spots, we're always going to be, it's going to be a healthy rotation, I think, but it's also going to be a really good competition in spring ball because you've got 4 qualified dudes now in Bothroyd, Reggie Grimes, Ethan Downs, and Trace Ford. We're all going to be fighting kind of to play that edge rusher spot. I think that rotation is going to be nasty. I look forward to it. It's funny because that was a position that we were worried about in the offseason. We were talking about how it was maybe the Sooners' weakest position. That's quickly changing due to the portal.
Yeah, it's interesting how the body type that they're going after right now too, with the edge. I think you mentioned it before we started recording. Brandon, Trace Ford is the smallest edge that they've recruited from the transfer portal, because everyone else with Bothroyd, Grimes, and Downs are all in that 6'4", 270-ish range, and then Trace is 230. Right, 240. So he's
6'3", 240. Yeah, he's 30 pounds lighter than all of them.
Yeah, significantly lighter. Like it'll be interesting to see how they use him with Bothroyd. I did a little bit more watching of Wake Forest's season on the defensive side of the ball. He did get moved around a lot for both sides of the line. Occasionally played on the interior. Wake Forest did have times where they would run three guys rushing, three-man line rather than four. And I think he actually did better in those situations. He moved a little faster for some reason. I don't know if it's because he has a little bit more sense of urgency, knowing that there isn't going to be someone on the interior to help him out with the guard. Versus Clemson, he did demand a lot of double teams. So definitely a guy that teams game plan for, especially a team like Clemson who has big guys on the offensive line. They know that they can probably manhandle other teams in the ACC for the most part. And Rondell Bothroyd was a guy that they really decided that they needed to put a little bit extra emphasis on because he was going to disrupt them. In the run game, he is maybe not a liability, but probably not the best at playing the run. But you got Ethan Downs there, who that's where he excels. So it'll be interesting to see if he does play a lot, whose time does he start to eat into. I would say it's Reggie Grimes, given that Reggie didn't have an impressive, really entire season outside of the first 2 games of the year. But you never know. There's always the possibility where they might kick him inside. Maybe Reggie gets thrown inside. They have him gain a little bit of weight and then move to the interior. This defensive line is going to be interesting to follow throughout the offseason, especially when it comes to the spring game. I think that's going to give us some answers on where guys are going to be fitting in and how they're going to be playing, what if there's going to be a heavier rotation with the entire line, if they're going to have more situational packages, like is it going to be, Bothroyd and Trace Ford coming in when it's, third down and they need to get after the passer, and then Grimes and Downs when it's more of a run situation. So definitely something to keep an eye out on, and I'll be watching for once the spring game comes around.
And you bring up a good point about Reggie Grimes, and Brandon, you weren't on when we discussed about it, but I had a theory that I think Reggie Grimes is going to be moved in more into the interior. I think they're going to try to beef him up a little bit and have him play more of the interior defensive line. And with the way that they're recruiting, you've got maybe Grimes and Jacob Lacey now kind of moving into that defensive line or the center of the defensive line. And then could you go get a guy like a Devon Sears? It adds some immediate depth and immediate help. And then you also can't forget about R. Mason Thomas. That's why I also think that with this addition, R. Mason Thomas is going to play. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to start, but he started really coming on in the second half of the season. So I don't think they're going to stunt his growth with the addition of Bothroyd. And Bothroyd came in, he had offers all over the place. I mean, it's not just like, this is just a random pickup. OU's just picking up a, random guy for, to fill a spot. I mean, other programs like a USC and an Auburn, and I forget where I think he visited Auburn before coming here to Oklahoma. I mean, he was wanted by big time programs. So getting him, Brent Venables and his staff being from the ACC, the familiarity there, jumping on him early, I really think that paid off. And I think he's going to pay dividends down the road, and someone that Oklahoma fans in Oklahoma should be really excited about. And they closed him out.
So is that 2 wins over Muleshoe in the portal this offseason, counting Trace Ford too?
I don't know if he actually ever went out to USC or if there was legitimate interest from Bothroyd. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they did offer, and Oklahoma won out.
Counted as a win. Counted as a win.
Yeah. I mean, I count it as a win, right?
I feel like is there a room, or is there a room? Is there a position group that's going to have more competition for playing time in the offseason than the D-line now? Because I have a feeling PJ is going to push for playing time too.
Defensive back.
Yeah.
I think defensive back is going to be extremely competitive. I mean, those 2 spots are the 2 weakest spots. So it makes sense that most competition would be there, right?
I mean, I think there's going to be competition all over the defense, because Woody's the only starting DB coming back. Well, corner coming back. So who's going to be the corner number 2? Billy Bowman's probably going to get to keep his spot as a starting safety. Who's going to be the guy alongside him? Is it going to be Key Lawrence? Are we going to have Reggie Pearson back there? Peyton Bowen going to get any time? Robert Spears Jennings played some last year. Like, there's going to be competition there. The defensive line, if there's competition there, it's because of their underachieving last year, not so much because they're so good that they're upgrading. I mean, they are upgrading, but they didn't do great. So
Said they suck so bad. We got to just compete with. We got to bring anything in to compete.
I think. I mean, realistically, yeah, that was kind of the problem. They had some games where they started doing a little bit better, but they weren't consistently great. So all the guys that have been brought in, I think, could elevate the play of the guys that are there currently. But if we're being honest, that defensive line was not the strong suit of the Oklahoma defense. Even when the OU's defense did look good, it was mostly the coverage guys were excelling and giving them enough time to get after the passer or get to the quarterback and have him make a mistake.
But I guess what this is doing, I'm not saying that Rondell Bothroyd is not going to be great because he could have a career season. I certainly hope he will. But if you at least bring in guys that have similar abilities and you can roll them out and you have more depth, in theory, the guys should be fresher when it comes to the third and fourth quarter. And I think that's where the cliff, I mean, the defense was just exhausted. And if you can just bring in guys that are comparable at least, you're going to see the defense improve as a whole. I mean, eventually they'll start really having elite defensive line play, but for just now, till you get those elite defensive linemen developed, you got to do this.
I'm interested to see how they do play PJ. I don't know if he plays at all this year, outside of the 4-game max that he gets to play and keep his red shirt. Because if you look at him and how he's built versus the rest of the guys that are being brought in and OU currently has, he's kind of an anomaly. He's a lot leaner, longer, and especially with his wingspan. And these guys that Oklahoma has are a little bit heavier. Nowhere near as long as PJ, definitely not as lean. So I don't know if they're switching something up and they're just trying to get bulk right there right now, or if PJ is just so like they like PJ's talent and potential so much that they're kind of making an exception and think he can change the defense and the looks that they're going to put out there for the opposing offenses.
I think that length he presents is going to play in his favor a lot more than it's going to play against him. I mean, I agree with you. He's a different type of defensive line compared to the other guys we have on the roster, but I don't know, man. I think he's going to push. And I think Armason Thomas is. I'm kind of using Arm Mason as an example of why I think PJ will play this season, because Arm Mason got time as a freshman. I think the staff is going to play it fair. And I just think PJ is that talented. He's good enough to push for some playing time, especially like in pass rushing situations with that length. Even if he can't get to the quarterback, he can jump up and get a paw on the ball, knock it down. I think that length plays in his favor a lot more than it does against him.
Yeah, and staying on the defensive line, Devon Sears Jr., Jose and I talked about him earlier last week, and he took a visit to Oklahoma. After his visit with Oklahoma, he went out and took a visit at Tennessee and then finished up his visits at Penn State, and he announced that those were his top 3 schools, so that's where he went. And he is announcing, as you're watching this video, sometime today. I don't know when it's going to be announced. I'd imagine it's probably going to be early afternoon at the latest, and we'll know at this point. It seemed like Oklahoma did really well, and I'm doing some Jose detective work, and it looks like there's a lot of Oklahoma stuff over his Twitter. He retweeted Miles Creations, which he does a lot of edits for different players for Oklahoma. Isaiah Coe tweeted at him, as well as Tyrone Broden. It seems like he's retweeting and liking things that are maybe a little more publicly leaning towards Oklahoma. I'm not saying that that's where he's going to go, but Oklahoma has a definite need for his services. I mean, 6'3", 290, 6'2", 390, or 290, not 390. But it's someone that Oklahoma really needs. While his stats didn't wow you per se at Texas State, I think he's someone that Oklahoma needs along the interior defensive line. Brandon, what do you think?
He brings good size. It's at 290. I think he can get even bigger with Schmitty. But as we talked about before the show, I kind of look at this as more of a depth piece. I don't see him contributing as much as I do the other guys that we brought in, or beating out the guys who are already there, i.e. Isaiah Coe, stuff like that. I feel like it would be a good pickup, but I feel like it's more of a depth pickup for the Sooners in this one.
Would he be the biggest defensive lineman in regards to size at 290, or even if he pushes over the 300 mark at this point? I don't remember how big Isaiah Coe is, but he would be up there in regards to size, and probably someone that could at least get playing opportunities when it comes to three-man rush.
Coe is 6'2", 305, so very
Okay.
similar.
So he's
I mean,
pretty
he's
close.
a little lighter, about 50. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
pretty close. So
given that he didn't produce a lot at Texas State and he still has 2 years, right, of eligibility, Oklahoma might put him in a situation where they're going to beef him up. Has he used his red shirt? Don't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think he did either. Could be an opportunity for Oklahoma to redshirt him, have him for 2 more years after that, get him time most of the time that he's there at OU year one with Schmitty to beef him up, to get him a little stronger, get him over that 300 mark. Because essentially, when we saw Oklahoma do a 3-man rush, they were getting bullied backwards, and it wasn't fun to watch, really. So getting multiple guys that can move at that big size is going to be important.
For sure. I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't get Devon Sears, I'm not sure where else they can go. Honestly, it seems like Oklahoma's all in on him. They've hit pretty well. You know, most of their targets in the transfer portal, they're hitting at a high percentage. And moving on to someone, you know, on the other side of the ball on the offensive line, someone that they did miss is Matthew Lee. He is the interior offensive lineman transfer from UCF, where we talked about him on the show, I think maybe Wednesday's show, Friday's show, something like that last week, where he came in for a visit with Oklahoma. And naturally, everyone thought, including us, that Oklahoma was going, you know, they're the front runner because UCF, Jeff Levy, Dylan Gabriel, it just makes a lot of sense at 6'4", 295. He would come in and compete for a guard position. Before him being able to announce his commitment, Caleb Schaefer slid in and announced his commitment to Oklahoma, and he's the kid from Miami, Ohio, 6'5", 330, I believe. So in huge guy to be playing as a guard. Matt Lee ends up going to Miami. I think it makes a lot of sense for him because he played center at UCF. They need a center in Miami. It just seemed like that maybe if Schaefer didn't commit to Oklahoma, maybe Matt Lee was going to be that guy. But instead, Schaefer, he knew where he wanted to go. And we want guys like that. I mean, at the end of the day, if you show up on campus and that's the place you want to go, why not commit? And you can't tell a kid like that, that's 6'5", 330 pounds, no thanks. I mean, that's why two planes is a thing. What do you think, Brandon?
I couldn't agree more. Caleb Schaefer, welcome aboard. 6'5", 330, that'll do. I was about to say the same thing. Load his ass on the plane. He definitely contributes to us needing 2 planes with that size. And you look at guys like Jacob Lacey, Rondell Bothroyd. It's coming along. The big boys are coming. I'm excited about it. I'm with you guys on Matt Lee. Checking like Twitter and stuff. As soon as Dylan Gabriel started tweeting him, I was like, oh yeah, it's like we're made in the shade. Like they're flirting on Twitter. Like you know, like the Twitter in today's recruiting world it's not just hose detective work. It's a legitimate. It's not always guaranteed, obviously, but it's like a legitimate thing that you can use to crystal ball without having real sources. But like that's our best thing we can do, and most of the time it's pretty accurate with these kids. Like they put a lot on Twitter, whether intentionally or not. I mean, obviously their cryptic tweets are intentional, but them interacting with their pals and stuff, I don't know if they're doing that to give stuff away or if they realize that they are. But I mean, so yeah, I thought we are gonna get him, but it is what it is. Caleb Schaefer, that'll do. He's a 2020 All MAC, big boy. That's a huge guard. I'm excited.
And I think you hit it on the nail there, Brum, when you mentioning that it makes sense for Matt Lee to go to Miami, given that Miami needs a center and he stays in Florida, doesn't have to move very far, probably likes the weather there, doesn't have to go from sunny to bitter cold during the football season, going from Orlando to Norman. But and to that point as well, Miami has their head coach is an offensive line guy. For the most part, it makes sense why Cristobal is getting all these offensive linemen from high school recruiting. He got Samson Okunlola and Francis Boagao. Oh, whatever. The two 5-star offensive tackles from the high school ranks. He's getting offensive linemen to buy into what he wants to build in Miami. I saw some people when Matt Lee committed saying that he's going after short-term money. I think he's actually going after an opportunity where he can get drafted in the NFL. Having a guy like Cristobal there to help and develop them. Not a bad spot to land as an offensive lineman. Definitely unfortunate for OU. I think that Matt Lee would have been, even with Schaefer, the addition of Schaefer, he probably would have been a good guy to have compete for the center spot. But he only has a year left, if I remember correctly. So for Matt Lee, having 1 year and then you're going up against your competition as a returning 2-year starter at the center spot. So really probably the best move for him. Oklahoma probably does need to go and see if there's maybe one more offensive lineman that'll join via the transfer portal. I wouldn't say it's a huge need, but would be nice to get a little bit more experience because you do have guys. Currently all their offensive linemen that were recruited out of high school were tackles, and outside of Joshua Bates were tackles at the high school rank. So it would take a second for some of these guys to move into the interior and play guard. Not that it would be impossible, but it's even though they're all playing the offensive line spot, each has its own different technique, its own different physical requirements. You hear offensive linemen talk about it all the time. It's not easy just to go from the left side to the right side. It's not easy to go from tackle to guard because the physical requirements are different. So getting big guys that are used to playing guard is going to be important for OU.
Definitely. And talking about another offensive line target that Oklahoma is going after is a Stanford former tackle for Stanford. His name is Walter Rouse. Oklahoma had him on campus for a visit. It seems like Nebraska's in competition with him as well. I think they had him for a visit as well. Walter's coming in. He did not end up redshirting his freshman year. He played all 12 games as a true freshman for Stanford, which was in 2019, played in 2020. That doesn't count. He played in 21 and played in 22. So he has played in three seasons already. COVID doesn't count, so he gets one more season. I mean, he's not going to redshirt. I mean, the guy's already played every possible year, so he's got 1 year of eligibility left. He is massive. I mean, he's an offensive tackle. He's 6'6", 320 from Stanford. His degree is biomedical engineering, which is from Stanford. I mean, the guy's extremely intelligent, and I feel like someone that could bring some experience and also, I mean, a guy that's really smart on the field. I mean, you want guys like that. And I'm not saying that this is a must get for Oklahoma by any means, but obviously they want to add a guy like a Rouse or another offensive lineman that can add some experience along the tackle position because you have lost 2 starting NFL caliber tackles to the NFL. I mean, you could say Anton Harrison's a day 1 starter potentially in the NFL. I'm not sure about Wanya Morris. I think he gets picked relatively high. I just don't know if he's a day 1 starter for any NFL team. But you bring in a guy like Rouse, he immediately brings in competition against Guyton, Jacob Sexton, Aaron Parks, and guys like that. Whether they get him or not, I'm not 100% sure. But obviously, with Nebraska involved, Matt Rule he's been doing well. He's been landing a few kids in the portal, and obviously finished out strong in the high school ranks. It seems like he's open to Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma wants him. Jose, what do you think about Rouse? I mean, I feel like he's the type of guy that it'd be great to get, but if Oklahoma doesn't get him, it's not the end of the world.
Agreed. And you mentioned his degree being in engineering. I'm not sure how Nebraska's engineering school is, but if I would assume that it's pretty good and a reason why he's entertaining that possibility. Not that OU's isn't good, but the biomedical engineering, if I remember, was started when we were still in school. So it's a relatively new program at Oklahoma. Like you said, it would be a great addition for the program, but given that he has 1 year left, Matt Rule needs big boys to help protect his quarterback. and the engineering school is pretty good. I would lean towards him going to Nebraska, but it's not impossible for you to try to pull off that upset. I wouldn't get your hopes up if you're really wanting to get a different offensive tackle through the portal.
Yeah, I'm sure he's doing his research on what school is best academically because he's obviously a pretty smart dude going to Stanford. I think, Brum, you hit it on the head when you kind of did your intro on him. A guy who's very experienced on the field and also a genius in the classroom would be a huge get. Hose, I kind of agree with you too. I wouldn't say we're the favorite, but I'll be following it closely because I'd love to get him. I mean, that's a guy who's going to bring great experience on the field, and he'll be able to be a mentor to some of these young guys because I mean, he's been around. He knows some stuff.
Yep. So I don't know. At the end of the day, if he doesn't show up, it's going to make Jacob Sexton, and assuming that he's healthy come the fall, which I'd imagine he will be, he's going to have an opportunity to play potentially. It's going to be very, very young along that offensive line, along the tackles anyway. So moving on, do you guys have any more thoughts about the offense or defensive line before we move on to the wide receiver room? So end of last week, Oklahoma ended up losing Marvin Mims to the NFL draft, which, to be honest with you, it kind of shocked me a little bit. I was under the impression, at least my opinion on it, and I felt like while it will be a, round 3 or 4 guy, I think he could be a late second potentially. I felt like one more year in this system, make a few more catches, go for 1,400 yards, maybe a couple more touchdowns. I think he's a for sure lock in the second round in that case. Oklahoma wanted him. Obviously, it didn't end up working out. He must have felt like that he was getting good draft grades. Otherwise, then he wouldn't have announced. So he ended up his best season at Oklahoma. I think he finished 8th all time in Oklahoma history with most yards, most productive wide receiver in Oklahoma. 54 catches, 1,083 yards, and 6 touchdowns. For a guy that had such a bad year per se, that all the fans were bashing him because he's had a few drops, and it is what it is. He put together his best career season. And I think that just kind of is this season in a whole, where the miscues and everything else, you can't put it all on Mims. He must have felt like he was getting good enough draft grades and bet on himself and going to the NFL. So, Jose, do you have some thoughts about Mims leaving? What do you think?
It is unfortunate. Wish he would have stayed, but like you said, and we talked about it like right as the season ended. For a guy like Mims, he had his best year last year at Oklahoma. How much more can he really do on the field to prove that he is, a good wide receiver that belongs in the NFL and get that draft grade up? The drops definitely didn't help, but probably didn't kill him either. Probably was going to land in that area because as a wide receiver, you have to show you can make explosive plays pretty much from the moment that you get your opportunity as a starter. I mean, you're seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. doing that as a redshirt freshman. You kind of got to you got to get your name out there really quickly. And it's not like a quarterback where you only need one really good year to get you from day 2, day 3 status to potential first rounder. You got to show consistency as well. So he's going to be definitely a contributor probably to a team that ends up picking him. There's a lot of teams that are going to need a guy like Marvin Mims. The Packers have very young and not great wide receivers. The Chargers need guys. Their wide receivers are getting a little older. I mean, you can probably name off a few more teams. Those are just the ones that come up top of mind. He's going to get picked somewhere and hopefully where they have a good quarterback. That's something that he'll need to succeed early on in the NFL. We'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what these guys go to college for and play college ball for, is to make their dream come true of playing in the NFL, and that he's going after it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I was a little bit shocked when I saw it. I expected him to come back, especially after having a career year. He's going to be the clear-cut number one. I think if he would have came back, put up similar numbers, but maybe eradicate some of those drops, get rid of that. It would have helped his draft stock just a little bit. But I mean, the end of the day, you can't fault the guy. Jose is right. He's chasing a dream. He's definitely in a great position to get drafted. I mean, he's definitely going to get drafted. It's just a matter of when. Can't fault him. You gotta be thankful for the years we got to watch him. He gave us a lot of good memories. He had a lot of drops, as you guys mentioned this season, or I've heard. I didn't get to watch most of the season, but he also did some Houdini type shit. That catch he made against Texas Tech on the sideline, you know what I'm talking about? That was ridiculous, where he kind of caught it over the defender. I mean, Marvin Mims is one of the best receivers we've seen in our college careers or our time watching college football. So it sucks he's gone. He's leaving some big shoes to fill for whoever it's going to be. Maybe Jalil Farouk next season. But you know, it is what it is. He's chasing a dream. Best of luck to him. Wish he would have came back, but I can understand why he's leaving.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he's one of the better receivers in Oklahoma history, but it opens up the door for a guy like Jalil Farouk to become the true number one guy by himself and really emerge next year. And he's going to probably will. I mean, after a year with Dylan Gabriel in the system, you'll see him take the next step. So another guy that Oklahoma transfer wise, you saw him on social media and things like that on his Oklahoma visit. Andrell Anthony, he's the Michigan wide receiver. He has 2 years of eligibility left. His freshman year at Michigan, 12 catches, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. Last year, he only had 7 catches for 80 yards and 1 touchdown. So a little bit of a regression, you could say, as far as the stat line goes. But Michigan, for a while there, they were really uncertain in the quarterback room. Early in the season, they were going back and forth between the two quarterbacks of McCarthy and I forget the other guy's name. Anyway, they were flipping back and forth. Anthony kind of never really emerged. He's 6'2", 190-ish, 190 to 200 pounds. He's got a great size, great frame, and it's someone that Oklahoma had on campus. And coming in with 2 years of eligibility, the thing I am noticing what Oklahoma is doing, and they had Tyrone Broden on campus earlier as well. He's 6'7", so Anthony's 6'2". The guys that they're recruiting for the wide receiver room, they're big. They're big guys. You already got Jaden Gibson. Nick Anderson's there. You've got a lot of size, and you have Stogner in the middle of the field. Obviously, Jaquez Petaway comes in, and he's smaller. But Keon Brown is 6'2", 6'3" in there. There's a lot of size that they're going after between Anthony and Broden. What do you think about potentially Anthony? I don't really know who else is in on him, but the fact that Oklahoma was able to get him on a visit this weekend, it seems like Oklahoma's in a good spot, you could say, to land him. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, I would agree. It's tough to really get a pulse on the transfer stuff because these guys do have to make these decisions so quickly. They're traveling around to a lot of places really fast. So their reactions are, I don't know, they're kind of quick and they have to move on to the next one. But Andrew would be interesting. I think we've seen that OU's going after these bigger receivers for 2 recruiting cycles now, the way they ended the 2022 class and how they were recruiting in 2023. You mentioned it. I mean, they're going after guys that are over 6 feet tall, and unless you show big explosiveness like Jaquez Petaway does at the high school ranks, they're pretty much going to stick to those bigger guys. I mean, even Anthony Evans, he was super fast, but he was still over 6 feet. He's listed as 6'1" on Rivals, so they're going after bigger wide receivers, trying to create bigger targets for their quarterbacks without trying to give up too much speed or any speed at all. And I don't know where Andrew would fit, honestly. He might be a situation where it'd be like an LV Bunkley Shelton or JJ Hester, that the 2 guys that transferred in last year, where they might not get much time year 1 and they're going to be needing to compete year 2, because assuming a guy like Jalil does break out next year, that would be his 3rd year at OU, would be draft eligible. Maybe he moves on and opens up opportunities for a guy like Andrell, after 1 year being at Oklahoma. He doesn't really have much tape, given that he didn't play much for Michigan. So it's hard to really speak to where he's going to fit really wherever he goes, because you don't really know how he's developed in his 2 years in Michigan.
You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I feel like if he does transfer in, it reminds me a lot of an LV Bunkley Shelton, JJ Hester type situation. The lack of productivity at Michigan, and as Brem mentioned, there's a quarterback carousel and things of that nature. But as a freshman, it's okay, 12 catches, 3 touchdowns. But to regress as a sophomore, I don't think he's gonna. I don't see him being a guy who would immediately contribute for the Sooners offensively. I feel like those two guys you mentioned in Hester and LV Bunkley Shelton would end up being what would happen to Rondell here. I think obviously if you get him, we'll be excited. It's another receiver. The more talent, the better. But Tyrone Broden is the guy that I want. I think Sooner Nation wants. I mean, I think if he makes the decision to be a Sooner, he's going to be a guy who can play day one. That frame. He had back-to-back 500-yard seasons, almost 600 in 2021, 508 something this year, 7 touchdowns this year, 5 last year. He's a guy who's been productive. I mean, granted against lesser competition than Anthony, but I mean that 6'7" frame, and when you pair him, as Bern mentioned, with a guy like Austin Stogner and Jaden Gibson, I mean, if you put just those 3 on the field right there, that's 6'5" and up across the field. That's a lot of fun.
And I have a theory on it. Could Andrell be a guy, he didn't redshirt? Could they bring him in and redshirt him, assuming they get Tyrone Broden, and redshirt him next year, and then let potentially Broden go to the NFL and maybe even Jalil Farouk if he has a monster season like he's primed to do or positioned to do? Could an Andrell Anthony then emerge in the 2024 season? I could see that potentially happening where there's so much talent there that you can redshirt him, develop him, and get him ready to fill the shoes that are left open after a guy or two goes to the NFL or graduates. That could be someone that maybe it's more looking at 2024, and you don't really have to necessarily worry because he can come in, he's using his one-time transfer. He's not going to transfer out on you after next season just because he's frustrated and not playing. And I'm sure that Venables and them would be honest with the plans. He would have 2 years to play in the 24 and 25 season in the SEC potentially. I mean, definitely the 25 season, but potentially the 24 season in the SEC. There's a path for him to play, but I do agree. I don't know if it's first game 1 in 2023, but I'm sure they'll give him an opportunity to compete and maybe he emerges in practice. So, all right. Well, that's kind of and Tyrone Broden was in Happy Valley as well, visiting Penn State. According to his Twitter, I'd imagine we'll have an idea where he's going, or he'll announce. Maybe it's today, Monday, maybe it's Tuesday. Again, these guys have to make a decision because I think class starts Tuesday after MLK. I think it's typically the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day. So.
Quick thing to point out with Broden too, going back to the Hose School of Detective Work, him and Dylan Gabriel were pretty flirty on Twitter too, which I think again is not always definitive of where he's going, but it gives you some clues. Tyrone Broden and Dylan Gabriel were definitely flirty on Twitter. That's good news. Hopefully we see more of that flirtation. I also think Isaiah co-tweeted both Devon Sears and Tyrone Broden today too. So follow the social media stuff too. It's not just us messing around. Sometimes it's actually good stuff.
And you can see that Dylan Gabriel is becoming a leader on this team. I think he finally feels comfortable after being here a whole season. I think he's really motivated to be the guy come next fall. And I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. But anyway, do you guys have any more final thoughts or anything like that? If not, Brandon can just do the end of video challenge honors.
Yeah, this is a fun one. It's another 2-parter because obviously tonight is the night of the College Football National Championship. So I want to hear your guys' picks. When I was home for college over Christmas break, we hopped on here. We started talking about the playoff, and at first we were all. I mean, I was all aboard the Texas Christian wagon. Go Horny Toads. Let's bring it home. As soon as I started watching their playoff game against Michigan, not as soon as it, but maybe about halftime or beyond. I was actually watching it with Jose and some friends. It quickly shifted to Michigan. There's something in me. I can't have TCU be the first Big 12 school. I don't want them to win a national championship before we do. So I'm switching. I'm go Dogs all the way. I hope the Dogs bring it home tonight. I'm going to pick Georgia too. I'm going to go Georgia 31-27 Dogs. So that's the first part. I also want to get your guys' picks. Second part, in honor of Marvin Mims leaving, we talked about him tonight. He brought us a lot of memories, a lot of good times at OU. What's your favorite Marvin Mims memory? You think about him dunking on that OSU corner from Spencer Rattler in the Bedlam game, that catch against Tech this year. I think the best Marvin Mims memory for me is that 3rd and 19, down 8 against Texas, the Red River game. And granted, Caleb Williams made a hell of a throw, but that catch in the corner with his toe barely being in bounds, that has to be the greatest Marvin Mims moment in Sooner history for me. So those are the two parts: your prediction of who you want to win the national championship, and then your favorite Marvin Mims memory.
So I'm gonna stick with my picks. My pick of Texas Christian. I actually just looked up the line. Georgia's 12.5-point favorites. I'm pretty sure TCU was also big underdogs versus Michigan. That clearly does not. They don't care. They're going to go out there and do what they do to hopefully win the game, in my opinion. I think that if TCU wins, it's going to have to be a very high scoring affair. If it's low scoring, Georgia's going to dominate them. Their defense, that means their defense went out there and did everything that they needed to stop Duggan and the boys. So I'm going to go with 48 to 42 TCU.
Brandon, I had that same issue too. I don't necessarily want TCU to be the first Big 12 school. I don't know. It's very mixed emotions. I'm going to pick the Dogs 38-24. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. I think they cover. I think they're going to be motivated, and I don't think TCU is going to be able to handle the size along the defensive line and the offensive line. I think they're going to lose in the trenches. And here at Two Plains, we think games are won and lost in the trenches, and I think Georgia will dominate. And then the Mims memory, it has to be the Texas game. I mean, the Texas catch. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, that is one of the best catches in Oklahoma history, to be completely honest. I mean, that's not just Marvin Mims. I mean, that is one of the best ones in just that game, that the way they ended up winning it. I mean, how couldn't you pick that one? When I hear Mims, probably from 10 years from now, I'm only going to think about that one play. So
I agree.
Anyway.
I agree. I think it's a no-brainer. I will be curious to see if somebody has a different memory in the comment section.
For sure. So, all right, if you made it this far, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, do the individual challenge. Remember, if you already subscribed, when you like and comment on the video, it helps us out a lot to help us grow. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. Leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. That helps us out, and we will catch you guys on Wednesday.